Well, it's almost over, and he doesn't have much to show for it. As Barack Obama's presidency lapses into entropy, a Washington Post story says he got Dodd-Frank, Obamacare, and some minor environmental tweaks, but only by making enemies and by losing his party's congressional majority. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the paying members at BillWhittle.com. Well, men, some of our older viewers may recall that Representative Nancy Pelosi used to be Speaker of the House, and Harry Reid sat enthroned as Senate Majority Leader. Now, two Republicans perch there, thanks to midterm havoc wrought by voters as retribution for Obama's monocratic rule. And while the GOP picked up the honorific the Party of No, Obama's Democratic Party lost 14 Senate seats, gambled away 68 House seats, coughed up 12 governorships, and flushed hundreds of state legislative posts down the drain. Now, Stephen Green, I know that for many on the right, the glass is perpetually half empty because they drank that much vinegar. But as you look forward to the end of an era, how do you feel about Republican rejection of union card check and gun control legislation, to mention just a few passive-aggressive GOP successes?
Yeah, this is an unpopular thing to say on the right, but I've been more or less content with the GOP Congress. And keep in mind, that's because I expect to be disappointed in a big way by politicians. That aside, the GOP Congress has proven that it can and will work, will compromise, will pass good legislation to be signed by a Democratic president. We saw this from 1994 until 2000. You might have disagreed with Bill Clinton on a lot, but he was a smart enough president that after those 94 midterms, when he lost big House and Senate majorities to the GOP for the first time since, 1944 or something, Bill Clinton, he saw which way the wind was blowing, and he sat down and he worked with Newt Gingrich, and they passed the Balanced Budget Act, which didn't quite do what it said. They passed welfare reform. They passed some really solid legislation. So I don't want to hear about this stuff out. The GOP is just the party of no. But although I can say that in the last 6 years, thank God they have been, because Barack Obama is not going to sit down and negotiate. He's the I won guy. He's the pen and the phone guy. He's not the guy you negotiate with. He's the guy you sit on your hands and go, I don't know, what do you want to do? Because he's not going to do anything productive around a negotiating table. That's not what he does. But you know what? That aside, most of Barack Obama's legacy is this corrosiveness, this corrosion that he's done to the American body politic with his pen and his phone, with his executive orders, with his secret deals with Iran, all of this stuff, and his hectoring. This is not who we are, of the American people. This is what really worries me. People need positive leadership. They need to be led somewhere. They can't spend 8 years being hectored by their own president without some long-term corrosive effects. That, I'm afraid, is the real Obama legacy.
Well, Bill Whittle, the very names conservative and progressive suggest heel-dragging for the former and advancement for the latter. So how can Republicans keep winning and winning as they have with the implied slogan of quit moving forward?
Well, when you stand on the edge of the cliff at the side of the Grand Canyon, this particular slogan gets some traction, doesn't it? I mean, when you're facing the abyss of all of this fiscal catastrophe, foreign relations catastrophe, reduction in civil rights, human rights, reduction of our freedoms, the people are saying, hey, we need to slow this down, are actually got a point because they happen to be right. And I think the reason that conservatives are not more fired up is because we shouldn't just be saying we need to slow this down. We need to turn this around and back it up a little bit. I do think it's interesting that you point out that the article pointed out that the two big achievements of Barack Obama were Obamacare and Dodd-Frank. Dodd-Frank was the legislation put in place to prevent people like Chris Dodd and Barney Frank from ruining the economy the way they did prior to the passage of Dodd-Frank.
It's true.
It's absolutely true with their federal insistence that bank makes loans to people that they know can't pay them back. So basically, his two big achievements are, let's name legislation after these two guys because they caused the problem, and then, of course, Obamacare, which is falling apart probably more quickly than we can keep up with it. It's not going to survive, and everybody knows it, because as we said at the time and as we've been saying all the time, you cannot mess with the laws of economics. They're like thermodynamics and gravity. You can play with them, but you will not be able to do it over time. P.G. O'Rourke said, if you think health care is expensive now, wait till you see how much it costs when it's free. And he's absolutely right. But if you really want to look at the Obama legacy, Scotty, you've got the two things that this article is claiming as positives are not positives. And nothing is said about the negatives, which are astonishing. Our military capability is far below what it was 8 years ago. Our standing in the world is immeasurably worse, not just in the Middle East, but with all of our allies. In short form, you could say they used to laugh behind our backs. Now they laugh openly to our faces. Our allies know that we can't be trusted. Our enemies know that they don't have to fear us. And I think worst of all, really, two things worst of all. This president, as I'm about to point out in my next firewall, is using race relations and allowing the country to split apart along its most painful scar, which was healing. He's reopened that wound in order simply for the Democrats to get political power and money. That's horrific from a moral sense. I think finally the worst part about the Obama administration has been the things that you don't see. Right? There's things called opportunity costs, and if we put money into one thing, that means we don't get to put money into other things. And the stagnant growth of this economy over 8 years because of these policies are not immediately obvious in terms of seeing bridges collapsing. But what we would have been able to do if we'd had somebody who understood, just let the government get out of the people's way. Let them go. Let them start businesses. Let them hire people. Where would we be, if he hadn't been there? I come to this many times. I've mentioned it before. This old time travel cliche where you go back in time and you step on a butterfly and you come back to the present and the world has turned horribly wrong. It's just a horrible, horrible nightmare. And then you have to go back and correct the timeline. I feel like we're living in the nightmare timeline. I feel like somebody stepped on a butterfly that they shouldn't have, and we should be, driving our Jetsons cars and our nuclear-powered desalination plants. And in all seriousness, though, there is an incredible amount of economic gain that was squandered, a decade of growth and prosperity that's been pitched away, and no one will notice it because no one misses it, but it's real.
Hey, Bill, you talk about wasted opportunity, squandered growth. If Obama's recovery had just been average, had it just met the post-World War II average, this economy would be $2 trillion richer. And what that means to every American family is thousands of dollars more in their pockets every single year. That simply doesn't exist.
Why settle for average when you can have abject failure?
That's right. That's right.
As we examine the legacy of the 44th president of the United States, conservatives and Republicans tend to give Obama more credit than he deserves. In reality, Barack Obama has been a setback, as Bill pointed out, for the country when it comes to the economy, race relations, truth, justice, national security, and our reputation abroad. We can recover from those setbacks. But Barack Obama has been a disaster for the Democratic Party, from which they may not soon recover. He created a cult of personality, but no coattails, a larger-than-life persona, but no democratic movement. He positioned his perceived successes as the result of who he is, his unique story, not a result of the ideas that have historically guided his party. He took over the DNC, rebranded it in his image, remade its database, and quickly established that the party needs him more than he needs the party. The DNC orbits Obama's aura, which is now dissipating into the ether. Well, in light of his true legacy, I would suggest the following displays be included in the design of the Obama Presidential Museum and Library. An entire wing to serve as a tribute to the greatest gun salesman who ever lived. Sponsored by America's firearms manufacturers and the NRA. And number 2, another wing offering adoration to the man responsible for electing more Republicans than any Republican ever has. Sponsored by the RNC. Yes, the man who got hired without a resume will retire with a list of accomplishments you could print on one side of a business card in 44-point type. Who's going to fill the vacancy? Well, to paraphrase an old punchline, Obama didn't leave no vacancy. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the Right Angle team, I'm Scott Ott. Thank you to the members at BillWhittle.com who we consider the executive producers of this show.
Absolutely.